Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in today. In our fireside chat today, we have Ng Ka Hoe, who is a registered financial planner under the Malaysian Financial Planning Council, or MFPC. And he has been in the financial industry since 2007. He's extremely passionate about financial planning and believes in adding value through private and personalized consultation and coaching. He shares his info and empowers his clients through semi-style facilitation of games and activities. His clients comprise of executives and managers ranging from local and MNC companies, and he holds a BSc in computer science from the Asia Pacific Institute of Information Technology. Now, thank you so much for taking your time to come and join us today, Ng Ka Hoe.
Yeah, I'm so delighted for being invited here. Thank you very much, Ernest.
Thank you. Now, Ng Ka Hoe, as you probably know, the Fireside Chat is actually our platform to actually reach out to Malaysians to help them to make better financial decisions. And given the present situation in Malaysia, financial planning is even more important. And this is the reason why we wanted to reach out to a professional such as yourself to seek your advice, to try and help Malaysians who are in this predicament, whether they're either having a stable job where the company is okay, or whether they're having challenges whereby their salaries may be cut, or maybe even their jobs may be cut as well. Because financial planning, I believe, and you, as you have told me before, it's not just when you do it when you have money. You have to do it all the time as a discipline. But for the benefit of all our viewers, can you just tell us a little bit about what does financial planning mean?
Actually, financial planning is a very big word. In fact, in Malaysia right now, financial planning, this word is so confused that naturally the first thing that I would say 80% of the Malaysian will ask, hey, you're a financial planner. Are you selling insurance or unit trust? Have you ever gotten that before?
Yes. In fact, everybody, in my opinion, tries to give advice financially and they say that they're a financial planner. But that's why a lot of people are confused. What does it mean? How does it help me?
Correct. So I wanted to start off by sharing more of what a true financial planner does, right? So just like an architect is responsible to draw up the blueprint of, let's say you were to build up a bungalow, or let's say your dream house. In fact, after the architect draws up the blueprint, you will have your contractors to actually physically do up the bungalow. Similarly, as a financial planner, the true financial planner that you find in US and UK, basically they are the ones that draw up the financial blueprint of their clients, right? So, however, in Malaysia, because the financial industry somehow rather is a lagging, maybe perhaps like 10 years or 15 years, right? So that's how the financial industry started in Malaysia, is by a lot of the intermediaries, which is the insurance agents, the unit trust agents, going up there to actually sell products, because it's easier to sell a product than to sell a service. Do you agree? Yeah. So only in the last maybe 10 years, we've started to see more true financial planner coming up to help. That's also as a result of the initiative by Bank Negara and Securities Commission, wanting to institutionalize or bring out more sort of non-biased individuals or consultants to be able to help more people in Malaysia generally. So I guess that's the frustration that they get, because year in, year out, this is what I hear. I'm not too sure whether it's true or not, but year in, year out, they will have this type of report or complaints of misconducts, right? And all this hanky-panky. And you probably know, since you've been in this industry long enough, that Malaysia has one of the highest scam rates or fraud rates around the world.
There's definitely quite a lot of reports of that. So let me just get what you've said and try to summarize it out. So what you're saying is that as a financial planner, you don't have an insurance, you're not selling insurance, you're not selling mutual funds, you're not selling me a product per se, but you actually sit down with me and you look at my present situation and ask me where I want to go and then design a blueprint how to get there. Is that what you're doing?
It's a yes and no. I think that's the confusion because let me share with you in UK and US, right? True financial planner, yes, that is how they operate because the environment there is so mature that you basically can walk into the bank and buy. And the product wise is they've cut away with the middleman or commissions, right? So that's why in terms of competitiveness, in terms of product in the UK and US is so much more competitive as compared to perhaps the Asian or Asian counterpart here. So, but they went through that whole transformation that we're going through right now as well. So it's not to say that we want to sell, but unfortunately, insurance and unit trust is one of those base product which every individual should have. It's a matter of whether as a financial planner, because I think you also have this experience. Tell me if I'm right. You're not sure whether the person planning for you is really planning for you or planning for himself.
Yes, that definitely has come across several times as well. Yes.
Yeah, but unfortunately, right, if you understand the industry well enough, sometimes it's also very hard to blame them. I'm not giving them an excuse for them to not take up responsibility, right? But because with the environment changing so fast, which the regulator are pushing for, a lot of them are failing to adapt, right? Just like how COVID-19 came in suddenly, then everybody had to adapt. So right now in Malaysia, we have about 700 licensed financial planners. Those that are true having a license registered with Bank and SC. But even then, right, perhaps only maybe 10% people like me and my colleagues and my those people who are in the industry really wanting to give a non-bias and also trying to charge our clients to be in line with the interests. I'm not sure whether you understand what I'm trying to say. Because right now, when you are very product-based, ultimately, if the client finds that you're not sure whether you are selling him or really helping him, rather than that, in the UK and US, they actually have two types of practice. One is called a fee-based practice. One is a fee-only practice. So like professionals like doctor and also lawyers, you never hear them selling product before. Right? They're all fees and charged by the hour. The closest we can find is probably like a medical, like a doctor. So a lot of times we use the doctor analogy because a lot of my clients come to me. Okay, financial planning, just to answer your question, right? Financial planning when my clients come to me, I will share with them, just like a doctor, we need to diagnose what problem they have first, right? So once we know what problem they have, basically there's two options. Either we operate you, just like a doctor, or your one is mild enough that we just give you medication. So when you say medication, it's like your unit trust, insurance, and will and trust. Those are products. Those are medication, we call them. If you have to operate you, people similar, like if they have a debt problem that they've got to restructure. So that's our analogy of putting them on the operation table and operate them.
Right. Now, I think I have a much better picture right now. So basically what it means is that you basically come from a position of helping your clients to restructure their entire financial portfolio to get them to where they want to go in an unbiased and in a professional manner. Excellent.
Yeah, you got it right on the spot. Basically, it's about the direction because generally as a human being, right, we know enough what we don't want, but it's very hard for us to know or decide what is it that we want in life. So a lot of financial planner is also about life coaching because we work with our clients to be able to articulate out what is it that they truly want in their life, right?
One of the challenges, Ng Ka Hoe, is this. Financial planning, budgeting is not something that we learn in school. It's not in primary school or secondary school. And the Malaysian education system, although I'm a product of it, as I'm sure you are as well, we go through school learning, but not so much in terms of how money management works. And then all of a sudden, when we graduate, you get a job, and the first thing that you get is a credit card. Where and how does one then start financial planning? What is this world about financial planning all about? How does one plan? Or when should one plan for retirement? Closer towards the age where they retire?
Actually, there's a lot of questions there. Can I help you to break it down?
Sure. I'm very interested in this topic because I think a lot of Malaysians, if they don't plan correct, especially during times of turbulence like this, it will definitely affect them and impact them for a much longer period. So I'm really curious to have your answer.
I'm very happy that you are one of those people who, when you graduated, you got a credit card, because during, I think your age and my age is quite similar. During our time, I think to get a credit card is like, you know how the kids now, when they get a handphone, it's a prestige. It's a prestige. You know? I don't know about you, but for me, but I was quite lucky because I was working in the bank when I first started, and a lot of my friends didn't have credit card. So when I have credit card, it's like, wow, I started at age 20. Then I think that's how most of the younger people feel right now after now it's so easy to get as compared to last time, right? So when they first get a credit card, then they're like, oh my God, I feel so gaya. It's like when the kids, like my kids right now, they're 10, 14, they want to have a handphone. When they get a handphone, then like, oh my God. So I guess that whole feeling of like euphoria, I think this is one thing which I'm glad you asked this question, because financial management and also emotion are actually two worlds apart. Because ultimately, when you're feeling good, tendency of your overspending is very high. And we've seen enough report to know that, when you suddenly get a windfall, or somebody get the EPF, or somebody wins lottery, right? You can bet within maximum 3 years, the funds is all gone. I mean, some even 3 days, depending on the fund.
Wow, 3 days. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm also a culprit of that. But that's a story for another day. Okay. But I mean, I can understand that whole feeling, because you never handle so much money, and suddenly all of a sudden you've got this 200,000 sitting on your lap. There was this famous story in Singapore. There's this widow who got a windfall of 1 million because the husband was working in SIA, and then he got into an accident, and they paid the family 1 million. Within 2 years, I think, they lost all the money, because they appeared on the newspaper. Then the relatives found out. Then everybody came and be a relative, asking for money, asking for donation. Stuff like that happened. And then when you suddenly get 1 million, then you start to spend. And you thought it would never end, only to find out 2 years later that you've got nothing left in the bank account. So I think that basically sums up how what you were asking, essentially, when as a fresh graduate, suddenly you came to the working world, starting to earn your own income. And then we got this plastic card, which basically sort of like unlimited spending. So I guess that's how the emotion take over. And by the time when they find out, then they are like over 20,000 in debt. Because in Malaysia, at one point of time, when you cross 30,000, you basically can file for bankruptcy. Yeah.
When should people start considering or start planning their financial planning, or doing the financial planning work? When is a good time?
Actually, you said it already just now. We wish we had this lesson taught in school, because I didn't have the liberty or fancy or opportunity when we were in school to learn financial. We were only able to learn from our parents, right? So I think most of us are learning from our parents, modeling that. I think right now, the government in Malaysia, 2 years ago, is really something which I truly admire. I think there is a big realization that a lot of people are struggling financially. So 2 years ago, have you heard of FEN, Financial Education Network? Yeah. So it's actually 7 big boys coming together: Banegara SC, HDN, AKPK, PNB, then you got MOE as well, right? So thank you for introducing Mr. Mafrukin to me, because I had a long chat, and we are actually bouncing ideas off to see how we can support this National Financial Education Strategy 2019 to 2023. So I think it's a good step moving forward. In fact, it needs to be accelerated. That's how I felt. You're muted. You're muted.
Kao, can you hear me now?
Okay.
Sorry about that. Can I just ask you, I mean, policy aside, but in terms of practical aspects right now, if I'm just coming to the workforce right now in Malaysia and I'm starting a very entry-level job, let's leave gig economy aside for the time being, okay? Let's just say I just have a standard basic job right now. I have nothing to save. It's literally, as the Malays say, makan pagi kais pagi, makan petang kais petang. So you're literally living from hand to mouth because the cost of living, cost of transport, and sometimes even if I'm commission based as well, because if I have a salary job but my commission is based on performance, and if I cannot sell because of CMCO, there's nothing to save. Should I stop doing financial planning right now and only save when I have extra?
I love how you bring out a lot of my personal story. In fact, I started working. Yeah, with policy aside, right? To answer your question, I don't think that if you have a very low income, it's an excuse to actually stop financial planning. Maybe because financial planning is a big word, right? It consists of 7 key pillars, right? Number 1 is cash flow management. Number 2 is insurance planning. Then you've got your investment planning, tax planning, education planning, retirement planning, and also estate planning. So when you say you don't earn enough, right? It's not an excuse to not manage your cash flow and your savings. Because the story which I wanted to share with you is how I actually quit my banking job, and I started as an insurance agent back then. But the time, because I wanted to be in an environment where I wanted to be a very win-win situation where if I do well, then my leaders will do well, right? Because corporate life, I think you've been there before. It's actually very hard to make it into a very conducive, positive environment unless you, of course, join the newer companies like Google, Mind Valley, right? So when I gave up that job, I was earning about 5K, and that was back in year 2007. 2007, 5K is quite good, And I started the job didn't have a base pay, but there's this financing scheme I took, which is 2,000 ringgit. So it's the same analogy that you're saying, if the makan kais, what?
Makan pagi kais pagi, makan petang kais petang.
Makan pagi kais pagi.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the same thing. But I learned this tool, which I just shared this afternoon. We collaborating with one of the co-working space to share with more people. This tool I've been using for the past 12 years. It's called iShare, right? And I started using that tool when I had the income of 2,000. And imagine I was supporting 2 property at a time, and my wife was on the verge of delivering. So can you imagine how challenging it was? Yeah. But nevertheless, I went ahead and do that. And basically, right, that system allows us to put aside savings first and then spend the remaining. That is one of the biggest key difference I see between how the rich practice their financial versus the poor practice. The rich will always put aside savings first, then spend the remaining. But the poor will always spend whatever first and then put whatever left in savings, which is nothing. No? So as a result of that, right, I basically able to, of course, my income grew, but it's because of the discipline of being able to save every month. Because the system is supposed to split into 3 parts. And because of the habit already, right, and the automation, there's a money automation system which we also share in our class that automates the whole splitting, right? So when my income become 10, I didn't have a problem because the system was automating by itself, right? And I could save, and from there, I guess the main thing here is about knowing how to invest, because a lot of people want to invest, but they don't want to do the boring work of saving. Can you relate?
They like the excitement of telling people I'm an investor, but the nitty-gritty work, the day-to-day dull work is putting the money aside, making better choices, more cost-effective choices. I think that's what you mean.
Exactly. In fact, if you can't save, there's no way you can start investing, right?
How about the concept of borrowing to save? But let's leave that for another segment of this discussion. I want to talk about that too, because that's very, very close to my heart. And it's basically around cashback deals or rebate deals where people say, you can become a millionaire instantly. And what happens after that? But let's leave that aside, because I've been hearing a lot about this coming up from some of our Malaysian counterparts as well. But
Just to add on,
go ahead.
just to add on to that, right? Because I understand that you've joined a property agency, or is like a property company, right?
Yes.
And this simple tool, which I was sharing, basically, when I look back on a hindsight, is the reason why I was able to buy one property a year from the year 2010 to 2012, because of this simple tool, right? And of course, I agree with you, like, all those cash out, cashback, all those things. I will feel that to borrow to invest is probably like an intermediate level. So if your basic level, you're not doing it well, don't bother going intermediate, because you can screw up yourself pretty quickly.
I completely agree. I mean, there's nothing wrong. Don't get me wrong, for all those viewers and watchers out there. There's nothing wrong with any tool. Any tool has its purpose. It's a question of how you use the tool. It's just like a knife, I think. And the analogy I like to use is that a knife can be used to either cut the food to make good food, or it can be used to harm people as well. So it's how you use the tool. But I wanted to bring back towards financial planning per se, particularly for the younger generation, because to me, this is where the crux of the matter is. I understand about the theory of compounding, and compounding needs time. If you are 55 and you're only starting now, it may be a bit challenging. So the longer you actually have to the point of exit is going to be better for yourself. So the question here that I have is that if someone earns very little and the cost of living, I mean, let's do basics. You rent a room, you got to have food to eat, you got to find transport to go to the office, you got to have communication, you have to have a phone line or a handphone. Just say, even though you have a very simple smartphone, when you add up all these costs, and especially when you're living and working in Kuala Lumpur per se, it's quite challenging to have everything at 2,000 ringgit a month to 2,500 ringgit a month basic pay. How do you start financial planning? Or should you say that, okay, I only start when I have 5,000 ringgit a month, then only I start?
I do agree with you that right now, it is very hard to compare 20 years ago when I first started working. It is also the same thing when I started working. It was very hard to compare 20 years ago when my parents started working. Because generally, leaving policy aside, because fundamentally in Malaysia, we do have the systemic problem in terms of income growth, right? But even without, even not taking that into consideration, like what you mentioned, financial planning is something which, once you learn it, it's like a life skill. Imagine like if you know how to learn how to swim, right? Once you learn how to swim, you basically can survive when I throw you in the water. So I see financial planning is a lot like that, because once you know how to use this life skill, it basically allows you to survive. And even though, okay, give you an example like what you gave just now. I totally agree with you. Right now is a lot more challenging for fresh graduate, because there's so many, I would call it distraction, a good to have. Last time it used to be a good to have, now it's probably like a need, like handphone, Netflix, Spotify. But having said that as well, once you have the financial planning skills, right? Coupled with the fact, like just now when I shared with you, one of the students that actually came in when she learned that simple ice jar, right? She was telling me like, oh shit, I should have learned that skill, like, even back before I came out to work, so that when I start working, I can save so much money. So with that skill set and understanding where your current situation is, our minds are very creative in such a way that we can, if given or asked the right question, we can actually resolve that situation very easily. It's just that a lot of us are so complacent. We always compare to the people who our peers is. So you see the guy next door and it's like, hey, he also like that, so okay lah, I'm still okay lah, but how many of us actually compare ourselves upwards, right? And want to move forward. If you look at some of the famous or successful people, I would one of them I would say is Faisal Rizwan. If you read his book, WTF 23 Properties in I don't know how many years, actually a lot of what he shared in his book, it is really creativity at play, right? Because he also was similar, like what you were saying, the makan pagi, I don't know, might be very shitty. But I hope I answer your question, because ultimately you need to have a perspective, right? Like right now, also COVID-19 is so badly hit, everybody is also suffering. But why is it that some people are doing very well, right? There must be a reason.
I think the crux of the matter is that with good financial planning, you actually have more resources. So during times of plenty, you have more. During times of famine, you still have enough to ride it through. But it comes with a price, and the price is discipline. Whether you earn $1 or $1 million, it comes with a discipline. If you cannot start saving when it's at $1, you definitely will not be able to save when it's at 1 million. I think that's what you're trying to tell me.
But if I can answer your question a little bit more accurately, is because I didn't have, I'm quite lucky that I didn't have to go through that experience like what the fresh graduate are going right now. But I can share with you one experience that I went through, which after I bought like the 16th property in like 3 months, that was the trigger of my second crisis. And at one point of time, I was having a deficit of 5,000 per month, right? So I think that is even worse than a fresh graduate having like no savings, because no savings you still can survive. But if you're negative 5,000, how do you? I think most of the people will have given up, right? But I actually count my blessing because of these financial planning skills that I learned early in my life that basically kept me surviving up until now. So when COVID hit, I think I'm lucky enough that I've been through worse. So now that's why I want to give back. I want to help more people.
Hang on, Ka Hoe. What you were saying is that you were asset rich but cash flow deficit.
A lot of people are like that, right? It's not because I have a deep pocket, but it's just that because of the financial planning skills that I've learned, I'm able to, number one, unlock that existing assets that we have. Number two is creatively finance or look for ways to finance for cash flow.
So can I ask you, if that's the case, then would, say, a personal loan or cashback deal work to finance the cash flow?
That's a very tricky question. Recently I had a chance to share with my property investor cell group, and they invited another guest speaker. He was basically using that method that you were saying. As much as I like the method, but there are flaws to it. So let me explain, right? So what some of the people are doing right now, I think including Faisal as well, whenever there is a situation where they cannot solve, for example, this guy is a negative 5,000, right? One of the things that they potentially do is, because if you take a personal loan, if you know the interest calculation is actually flat, that means the more you pay, you still pay the same amount of interest. There's no savings. So a lot of people actually resort to housing loan because housing loan is a reducing balance interest, right? So some of the people are very creative that instead of like, if I'm stuck having the 16 property, right, and I'm stuck because of the negative 5,000, some of the creative people will say, hey, why don't you go and buy some more property, get the cash out and sort of temporarily resolve your negative cash flow for the next 2 years. So after analyzing, doing my due diligence, because as a financial planner, we talk about prudent financial planning and also risk taking. I did not do it mainly for two reasons. Number one is that it's very hard to find grade A property. If you can get a grade A property, that means let's say you buy a property, it's undervalued, and you already can earn 100,000, and you do the cash out. That is a higher chances of resolving the situation. And at the same time, you're able to rent out that property with a positive cash flow. So what I mean by positive cash flow, that means after you buy the property, you rent it out at 3,000 and you pay off your installment, assessment, maintenance, everything, you still have a 500 per month. Right? I think in this market, it's very hard to find. It's not impossible, but it's just harder to find. You still need to do a lot of research compared to like 12 years ago, I found a lot of positive cash flow property, right? So this is something can consider, but it is very hard to execute. I don't know whether you understand what I'm trying to say, right? But a lot of the people, because they are blinded, they just go and buy property from the developer. I'm not saying developer property is not good, but I'm just saying that developer property may not meet a grade A criteria. It could be a grade B, grade C, grade D, grade E. So if you do that, if you buy a grade B to grade E property and subsequently get a cash out, resolve your current problem, but you actually have another problem on hand. Does that make sense? So you are actually delaying your slow death, you know.
So it's almost like borrowing from one credit card to pay off another credit card.
You only can do that if the property, the asset, can actually really help you in your current situation. And there's not many, it's very hard to find. And so far, I've not seen a developer unit. Chances are in auction and sub-sale.
To be fair, Ka Hoe, I know I put you on the spot, but to be fair, somebody also asked me before whether I would ever participate in a cashback deal. And to me, it's a very simple consideration of arbitrage. And for the viewers out there, arbitrage basically means buy low, sell high, or borrow and lend at a higher rate. So that's arbitrage. But the only way I would have done it is that, coming back to your example, if I do a deal where there's some cashback, I'll take the money and I just see if I can buy Bitcoin at $50 US. Yeah, I'll buy Bitcoin at $50 US and I'll just wait. Provided that there is enough cash flow. But I think, ladies and gentlemen, what Ka Hoe is really trying to impress upon you is whether it's asset rich or whether you have a lot of cash in your pocket, the cash flow is the one that is really, really important. Because if you have all these assets but you don't have enough cash or access to cash, you're going to have a lot of trouble maintaining all these assets. And it may become even ruinous to you, whereby auctioneers will come to your properties and auction them off if you cannot pay. Would that be correct, Ka Hoe?
Yeah, if you don't mind, can I just share
Sure.
A very simple case study which recently this student of mine came into my class, because we started having this class only in April during the COVID. And this guy, when he came in, right, he basically was having a negative 18,000 per month.
Wow.
Yeah, 18,000 per month. So when he came into the one-to-one, he didn't seem like that type of person who was going through that stress, because if you see me negative 5,000, I like, wow, shaking really, So when I went through the whole thing with him and we analyzed, it was because of a few business failure and also getting conned by his business partner, right? And also for the fact that he loves to invest in property. The interesting thing here, which I'm trying to relate to the earlier example we were sharing here, it's not so much about buying the right property, having a cash out. Actually, what is the right tool here that we're supposed to use is this housing loan, which has a reducing balance interest. Because what we're trying to do is actually for this guy, we help him, eventually we're having to turn around. We have him to save about 10,000 per month. So he was quite happy because he was having a deficit of 8,000. So he started bringing his family to picnic, going for holidays, cuci Malaysia, So I was so happy for him because he had some relief, and he could operate in a more confident manner, right? So the gist of what we did was we basically helped him to restructure his debt in such a way that a lot of his debt was a personal loan and also like those short-term loans where that's how he got into a very high installment payment, right? So when we reposition it and restructure it into a housing loan, we still are very mindful in terms of the interest, not to be overpaying as compared to what he was doing previously. But the more important thing is the installment. We could help him save about 10,000 per month. So
that's very good.
Very grateful.
So Ka Hoe, can I just ask you, let's go back to the beginning about the financial. I think it's addressed to the point whereby we realize that it is important. Can you give me, say, maybe the first 3 or 5 steps of what one should do if they are really starting on this journey, regardless of whether they just started a career or not? what should they do first to make sure that their financial health is in check? And I just want to bring it back to the analogy that you gave earlier. I'm probably quite old. If you see, I'm hitting my 50s already, but it just means
The
that,
same as me.
yeah, but every year we get our blood tests done, and every year we check because we want to make sure that we're on the right track, and any problems are addressed as early as possible. So similarly for financial planning, I don't want to wake up at 55 saying, oh, I'm retiring next week, next year. I have no money. What do I do? So can you give me like 3 to 5 steps for the benefit of our viewers? What should they do to start this journey, regardless of where they are from or which level they are at?
That's a very good question. In fact, for us, financial planner, we have a 6-step process. But I felt that sometimes there's a gap between as a financial planner and trying to advise our clients, right? Because 6 steps, people cannot remember anything more than 3. So right now in our class, we basically concise it to a 3-step process, right? And this is really the fundamental. If you can't get this right, then you can't even get the rest of the other 4. Remember I was telling you there's 7 key things that you need to do: cash flow, insurance, investment, This 3 key step is what we call the 3C, right? First C is actually calibrate. Calibrate is like what you say, you go for medical checkup every year because you want to know whether you're healthy or not, right? Similarly, in financial, calibrate means you need to know where you are financially now. Because if you don't know where you are, it's very hard to get to where you want to get to. It's like, if I don't know I'm in Malaysia, how am I going to get to Australia? You don't know whether you're going to take a bus, you're going to fly, you're going to take a ship, or walk there. Second C is what we call conserve. Conserve basically talks about, there's a few things in conserve, because cash flow is in conserve. First, you basically need to be able to manage your cash flow around. That's how we use the IJAR system, right? Second C, within conserve, we also talk about how to make sure that you have a very good defense system, because insurance itself is always a starting point in financial planning. That's why it is not wrong for people to say, I am a financial planner, or I help you in financial planning, because insurance is one of the key components to fortify your whole financial blueprint. If you relate it to a house, the insurance will be the walls, right? And of course, the third C will be charge. Charge means once you get your step 1 and step 2 done, right, basically you'll be able to capture a lot of the opportunity in terms of investment. It's no longer for you to chase. It's more like, the opportunity will float in front of you, whether you are ready to grab it. So in my experience, generally, if most of the people always focus 80% of the time trying to charge forward, that means trying to focus on investment, and forget about the 20%, right? Most of the time they can't find any investment opportunity. It's very paused. As compared to the other way around, if they focus 80% on calibrate and conserve, then the investment opportunity will always float in front of them.
You know what? You said something which is actually very true and very close to my heart, because I've seen it as well. Because when you are desperate to make something happen, you grab at whatever first that comes across, which may not necessarily be what's meant for you. It may not necessarily be a good investment to begin with. But when you say calibrate, can I just ask you, when I do calibration, if I don't know how to start, how do I do calibrate? So what's the first step that I need to do?
First thing is, if I may be a bit blunt,
yes,
is to really learn how to differentiate between asset and liability versus income and expenses. Because if you cannot get this part right, it's very hard to calibrate. It's like I'm giving you a compass, but you don't know how to read the compass.
So do I buy a book? Do I ask my neighbor? Do I talk to my friends who has a MNC job? What do I do?
Actually, right now, right, there's so much resources online. You basically can get all these things for free compared to my time. Last time we had to buy a book. Right now, you just go to Investopedia, right? You basically can type there any financial jargon, they will be able to share with you. But of course, If you want something faster, go and sign up for a free seminar. We actually have a class. We have free classes that you can join in. And I think that's why I'm so supportive of what the government is doing, because they're having a lot of these financial education classes even in school. So it's no longer an excuse for you to say that you don't know, because if MOE is going to have syllabus for that, yeah, it's a matter of whether you want to learn. No, it's like sex education.
But
Right.
what challenging part is that the level of bankruptcy in Malaysia is so high, and particularly amongst the productive years of a lot of people. And going to bankruptcy, although bankruptcy is in a sense good because it gives you some level of protection, but it's going to be quite challenging to come out of it, and it may take you quite some time to do so. So the challenge here is that how do you make sure that you are on more solid footing?
Actually, in Malaysia, right, I agree with you in terms of bankruptcy, it's harder to come out as compared to the US. But having understand bankruptcy is actually not so big deal after all. It's more of a stigma in the community. But having said that, as well as a financial planner, as an entrepreneur as well, bankruptcy is always the last resort we want to take, because it's not only the financial position, it's also about your credibility. Yeah, it's like you're trying to bail out, right? So to me, the question of how do we avoid bankruptcy is still coming back a lot to self-initiative. And let me share with you one thing. After having this class for 6 months already, even after teaching close to about 200 people signing up our classes, right? The number one biggest factor is procrastination. Yeah. Okay. So it's really about the individual. There's this mindset block that if you cannot get through that part, right? No matter how much financial education or how rich the content is, and you can just, spoon feed him, but it just doesn't go up, if that person is not willing. I guess this one comes back to attitude, and we actually extended our program in such a way that we talk about this part also, where financial planning is not just about financial coaching, it's about life coaching. So I realized in my past 5 years helping people doing debt restructuring, right, it's easy to turn them around from a financial point of view. The hardest part is if they're in depression already, right, or they are somewhat stuck in a hole already. It's very hard to dig them out. Right, so there's a certain amount of like NLP, so a certain amount of psychology to be able to communicate with them so that they understand that, hey, this guy really understands me very well. Maybe he really can help me. That trust building part, which this is something I learned in the past 2 years, which actually gave me a very big breakthrough, not only just helping my clients, but even for myself in my business.
Okay, great.
I don't know whether I answered your question.
I think you did. I think basically there's resources everywhere, and all it takes is basically someone to just start the ball rolling. And I'm pretty sure that if, for instance, they want to act on the information that they have, the resources that they get will probably also have the details as to who to contact. Worst come to the worst, you can always contact the government authorities, AKPK, Bank Negara's websites to be able to find out what can they do. And there's also a lot of consultants around as well.
Thankfully, in Malaysia, we are really, I think Malaysia and Singapore, we're really lucky because we have a government or a governor that really takes care of our people by setting up AKPK. In Singapore, they actually have MAS, a similar unit like AKPK that actually consult people for free and help people to sort of remedy their situation. Not entirely solve, but remedy, I think, which is good enough for free,
Excellent.
At the expense of taxpayer. So I think really sometimes it could be I recently read a book. I hope you don't mind me sharing with you, right?
Sure, please.
This book is talking about how when the whole environment is such a way that is being very well taken care of. As human beings, we become complacent and we always throw the responsibility at somebody else.
Hmm.
So this book talks about how in Belgium, right, this traffic police person or traffic planner, because he felt that if there's a lot of traffic light, people are always very dependent on the traffic light, and then they just don't care and they just drive recklessly lah. As compared to in India, when there is no traffic light, can you imagine like how well those people maneuver all over the place? They are very alert. So I want to just sort of like relate that situation, possibly in Malaysia, why we could have one of the biggest or highest bankruptcy numbers. It could be our government is taking care too well of us.
Okay. I think although that could be also true, I think that one of the things I hope to believe is that we are more enterprising, we're more entrepreneurial, we take the risks, we try. But I also understand because great decisions don't come out of luck. It comes with careful planning and careful strategy and execution, proper execution. Yeah.
Totally agree. Somebody was sharing with me, luck is 95% hard work and 5% being at the right place at the right time.
Absolutely. I would probably say out of the 95%, 94.5% is marrying the right person, but let's leave that to another day.
That's a different topic already.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining and tuning into this session of the Fireside Chat, where we actually had such a great discussion with Mr. Ng Ka Hoe, who shared so much of his experience in terms of financial planning and why that's important. Now, I'm pretty sure that you guys are going to be asking for more information, and you want more detailed information. And I'm pretty sure Ka Hoe couldn't share the details of a lot of things because I think he gives very specialized and very customized advice. So if you really need to find out more, please, I encourage you, please call any one of your friends who's a financial planner, as long as they are experienced. But if you want a third party who's unbiased, I know that Ka Hoe will give you really unbiased advice. And whether or not you take it, I know that Ka Hoe will give you the one that is best for you based on his experience and what he can share with you. And he's already said he's not a product pusher. He's actually a wholesome consultant to help you get to where you want to go. Ka Hoe, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I mean, happy that you invite me to be able to share my thoughts here today, because this is something which is very close to my heart, and I've not said it enough that we need more people to basically help spread financial education, right? So I think one of the reasons why I agreed to come on to this with you is because you're such a great person doing that part as well, actually sharing a lot of your contacts with me. So I'm equally grateful, thank you so much. Let's hope that we can find more people like-minded to be able to help more Malaysians moving forward.
Thank you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you at the next session of the Fireside Chat. Thank you.